Well, one thing before we get into the photographs, I want to tell you about this. So, talking about dulcimers, my cousin Chris Harmon recently entrusted me with the care of this piece for my collection, but this is probably one of the first, if not the first, dulcimer built in Watauga County, probably around 1888. And it was built by my great great grandfather, who's pictured here, Eli Taylor Presnell.
Hi, this is Kelly from Appalachian Memory Keepers, and today we have something really special for you. We are going to be visiting a private home in Watauga County, North Carolina that is absolutely filled with rare antiques, furniture, and a lot of Appalachian curiosities that you get to help us try to figure out what they are. I can't wait to show you, so let's go. What inspired you to put this collection together? Because everywhere I look, even in the bathroom, it's history, history, history.
Well, like I say, I started out with family history, just the basic genealogy part of it. But some sides of my family really were good at collecting things, preserving things, especially on my mom's side. And so some of those things were eventually handed down to me. So this clock is a Facebook Marketplace find, and it was originally advertised as being in the home of Johnny Cash's parents, Ray and Carrie Cash, in Hendersonville, Tennessee. So at first I thought it had a Cash family connection. I thought maybe Johnny Cash owned it or his parents.
How cool would that be?
But as it turned out, the man who bought Johnny Cash's parents' house also bought this clock. I think he bought it in Florida
Okay.
and moved it to Hendersonville and put it in that home. So one of the cool things about the clock are the inscriptions inside the door of different men who worked on the clock through the years. So 1831, 1841, 1864, and then this unique inscription where a family gave it to their father on Father's Day in 1935.
I love that. May it tick till time shall be no more.
Yeah, unfortunately it's not working at present. So, and some of the pieces I have are not necessarily my family, but they're regional pieces. Like this was from probably around 1900. Handcrafted in Iredell County, and I guess this is what you would call a step back cabinet. This is my great grandmother Henson's meal chest where she kept cornmeal and flour. So it's got a hinge lid and it has deep bins inside for storage. And my mother can remember her grandmother making biscuits out on top of it.
What are all the things on top of it?
Just different utensils that you might see people use. I'm not sure exactly what these are called. Maybe the fancy name would be a pestle, but I just call them mashers. And this was my great-grandfather Wallace's corn shucker. And
a corn shucker? I've never, what in the world?
Well, and I don't even know how to use it. I've shucked corn, but never with an instrument before.
Is it wood or horn?
It's wood, and it's got like a little leather strap, and
goes around the thumb,
I imagine you wear it somehow like that. But maybe some of your viewers can chime in.
If anybody watching this video has ever seen one of those or knows how it works, please let us know in the comments below. That's the first time I've ever come across one of those.
And this is not really a kitchen utensil. It is old, but it's like a grease pot.
Oh, that would hang probably on a wagon, and it would be full of grease, or do you think it was used in the house?
Probably more in a workshop.
In the workshop,
yeah,
the grease axles, anything moving.
And then...
oh, that's a cabbage cutter, isn't it?
That's my great-grandmother's cat.
Let me see that up close. Okay. Has anybody ever used one of those before? I bet you have, making kraut.
And these are old grain measures, and I guess you would call these like wall pockets that you would store, maybe salt or sugar or things like that in.
And then underneath, you've got a variety of
firkins and the one's called a piggin. I'm not sure where
piggin.
that.
Which one is that?
It's the one with this little attachment there. And then you see things like, of course, coffee meals were commonplace. This actually was my great grandparents' coffee meal, And then you have dough tables. This is not a family piece, but it's reflective of where they would put dough to rise and then to make the bread out on top.
How cool is that? A dough table. What year do you think that?
I don't really know what that one dates to.
Back to when they were still making dough at home.
Yeah, yeah.
To be precise.
So one piece that has been passed down in my family is this old pump organ, which dates probably 1880s, 1890s. Wow. And this used to be an organ that was in the old Bethany Baptist Church out in the Cool Springs community. And my grandparents had it after that and kept it in their bedroom. I laugh about that because I don't know why it was in their bedroom and neither one of them played an organ, but that's where it was kept all those years. And then I had seen where some people repurposed them into desks. And so I kind of got that inspiration. And I had a carpenter friend who did the work on it and had him turn the keyboard up so that we could keep that feature.
I was dying to ask you. I've never seen I was wondering if you played this a special way.
Yeah, it's a little awkward to play. And then we just added this piece of it's actually a piece of a dining tabletop. Yep. Just to make it into.
And then even the foot pedals.
Yeah. So I sanded and repainted those, reupholstered the pedal behind it, and okay. And now we'll move toward the addition of the house, and I'll show you a few other things. One piece I didn't point out, this unusual architectural feature there. I really didn't know what that was when I found it in an antique store in Tennessee.
Is it some kind of old grate?
Well, I really didn't know. What they told me was that it was a boot rack from a barn in Abingdon, Virginia.
Oh, okay. You put your upside down boot on here and let them dry out.
Yeah. And I want to show you this one other thing, Kelly. It's I don't know what this is, and maybe your viewers can help with this too. So a cousin of mine gave this to me. It almost makes you think of a cannonball, the weight of it and the look of it. But I've been told that it is not metal, it's not iron. But my great-great-grandfather Presnell used that as a doorstop. Wow. But have no clue what it's made of or...
Yeah, it's got pretty good heft to it, but it doesn't feel like metal. If I had to guess, I would guess maybe a piece of soapstone. There was a soapstone mine over in Ashe County that Native Americans used. And bowls from it have been found as far away as Ohio. Okay. But it couldn't be a piece of coal, could it? I just had that thought as well. Is it a polished piece of coal? Were you bad at Christmas?
And it's got this little knob out here too, so I don't know. It's kind of just.
Was there only one? Was there one on the other side, or
no? I don't think so.
Doesn't seem to be.
So maybe it's just a rock. I don't know.
That's too simple.
But anyway, I think that's kind of curious. And then this, I'll tell you about this musket real quickly. But my father taught high school for 30 years, and somebody left this in the closet of his classroom and never came back for it. And
can you imagine that in today's world? The FBI would be there.
Well, one thing was the mascot of the high school was the Pioneer, kind of like a Daniel Boone character. And so I have wondered if maybe the mascot used that and left it.
When he graduated, he forgot it?
Well, so my dad eventually brought it home, and it was at their home for probably 25, 30 years, and then he gave it to me. And I have researched it a bit. I do believe it's an authentic German musket from probably the 1830s. Wow. And I've read where the Confederacy imported a lot of those German rifles during the Civil War. So maybe that's what it is.
And you had several ancestors that fought in the...
Yeah.
And were they all Confederate side, or?
The majority, but like on my grandmother, my maternal grandmother's side, all four of her great-grandfathers were Union soldiers.
Wow.
And they some of them did live in Watauga, but were very close to the Tennessee line. And even though Tennessee was a Confederate state, Johnson County in particular was very pro-Union. And so they lived in close proximity to Johnson County and joined the 13th Tennessee Regiment.
And this part of Appalachia was bloody.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a time to settle feuds as well as the north-south kind of thing. So there was a lot of horrible atrocities occurred.
Yeah.
Did you know that as a member of our YouTube community, which only costs $2.99 per month and can be canceled anytime, you would be able to see the full extended version of the video that you're watching right now, along with a ton of other member-only and bonus videos? It's super easy to join. All you have to do is go to our YouTube channel page and click the join button, and voila, you're in. What in the world is this thing?
Well, this is a lamp.
I know it can't be that simple, Terry. What's the real story?
Well, it's not a family piece, and the shade was not part of it, but the base, it's just a curiosity because it once belonged to Doris Day.
What?
So
Doris Day?
Sometimes I look at online auctions, and so Julian's of Hollywood.
Oh,
I
think you have a problem.
They sell a lot of movie star memorabilia, and I just liked the look of that. I thought it fit in well with my theme, and so
Doris Day right here in the middle of Appalachia.
Yeah, who would have thunk it?
Now, what is the base?
That's just an old chopping block. I found that in an antique store in Nashville. So this is the start of the addition that I built in 2020, and even though these aren't family pieces, I think they're representative of the history of our times and our people. So this is a reproduction sugar chest, and this is a pie safe.
Which almost every family had one of those, didn't they?
Yeah. This is a family piece. This was my grandmother's pickling crock. And this was one of my grandfather's feed barrels that my other grandfather, who was a carpenter, made into a chair for him one Christmas. And here are a couple of pieces. This gourd and this jug down here, they both came out of the home of Ray and Rosa Hicks. And most people will remember Ray as a great storyteller, especially the Jack Tales.
Absolutely. He is a legend in these mountains, isn't he?
And he's a distant cousin, and his wife was a Harmon. So you know how it works around here. We're all kin 4 or 5 different ways.
That's right. I'm my own grandpa.
Yeah. But, unfortunately, their home place burned just a few years ago.
I remember reading about that. That was a terrible loss.
Yeah. And, even that home place was featured in some paintings that Bob Timberlake had done. So anyway, that was a sad loss, but I feel fortunate to have been able to buy those pieces and to have them here in my home. And this is called a Martha Washington sewing cabinet. I don't think Martha Washington ever actually used one like that, and I don't know why it's named for her, but that's what they're known as.
That's kind of like, where's your George Washington slept here sign? That's
right, yeah. And this is one of the older pieces I have. Again, not a family piece, but an antique. It's from probably the 1700s, and it's just called a wagon chair. So if you didn't have a bench seat in your wagon, you would just throw this in the back and have something to sit in.
Portable seating for the kids.
Yeah. This is a family piece. This was my great-grandpa and grandma Henson's dining room table, and it came from a nearby farmhouse. But the flooring in that house is made out of this same wood. I believe, Kelly, this is poplar.
Poplar, okay.
And the legs are actually, some of them are curly maple. There's one leg that's made out of oak. I think part of the apron on the table is made out of cherry. So I don't know if my great-grandpa made it, but if he did, I suspect he just used whatever scraps were around, and maybe even whatever flooring was left over he used for the top.
Yeah, to me it sounds like a tale of true Appalachian ingenuity. You used what you had.
Yeah.
And so a little bit of poplar, a little bit of maple, slap of oak, And this is a monster table. So
Yeah,
tell me who would have
it's-
eaten around this table.
It's actually 9 feet long and 3 feet wide. And when I built the original house, I had it in there, and I actually designed the floor plan to fit the table. But it got a little tight in there eventually, so that's one reason I built the addition, was to move the dining area.
Oh, that sounds like a good reason to build half a new house. I mean, hey.
But like I say, it came from their farmhouse. They had 5 children, but they had a lot of people who boarded with them, stayed with them, farm hands, extended family members who were living there, helping out with things. And my mother can remember eating at this table, and it eventually went to my grandparents, and then I asked my grandmother if I could have it, and so I refinished it, and it's one of my favorite pieces.
It is spectacular. Can you imagine all the country ham and fried chicken and blackberry cobbler and I don't know what else? I mean, I'm hungry.
Yeah, I know. A lot of good home-cooked meals.
A lot of good home-cooked meals.
And this piece is not all that old. It's from the 1940s, but it was my grandmother Harmon's buffet that she had in her dining room. And so I've tried to keep family pieces as much as I can and refinish them and reuse them. I'd rather repurpose things than go to a furniture store and buy something new, something with a history, something that I remember.
Absolutely.
And watch your head.
Yikes. It's awful low,
I know your viewers will wonder why I have my light fixtures, but I recently moved the table and now I've got to swag the lights over, so they're not normally like that. This piece is not a family piece, but it's one of my favorite pieces, and it dates from about 1840. And it's just a corner cupboard. I found it in an antique store in Winston-Salem, but it originally was from Virginia, and I haven't touched it. It's got the original paint, original stenciling around the crown, and even some of the mouse holes and features like that, which are things I love. So
that's what gives it ambiance.
Yeah. I want to show you another example of a dough bowl. I just think these are fascinating, and also the fact that they would repair. That they would, if it got a hole, you would just find something to repair it with, or
again, Appalachian ingenuity.
Put staples along
in
the
it?
crack to preserve it.
That kind of attests to the fact of how important and how well used dough boards were.
Yeah. And I'll show you something over here. This is one part of a set of andirons. I took the back off just to display these here.
So that's some kind of soldier, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a Hessian soldier.
Ooh, a Hessian from the Revolutionary War. They were, what, German mercenaries?
Yeah, Germans who came to help the British. And so supposedly these were manufactured to be andirons so that when they were near the fire or the fire was behind them, it was like burning the Hessian soldiers in effigy. So...
Oh, Americans have long memories right there. And it's very fitting since George Washington was the one that defeated them by crossing the Delaware, that he is proudly looking over the top right here. Did you do that on purpose?
I didn't even think about it till you mentioned that. So that's good that you recognize that. So I collect a lot of old photographs too. And I found this one of Abraham Lincoln in an antique shop. And then I've just paired that with a photograph of a cousin who fought for the Confederacy, John Ward. He was from Sugar Grove in Watauga County and actually died in the war. But that's made from the original ambrotype.
Wow.
This piece is another regional piece. It was made, if I'm not mistaken, by Mr. Pennington from Ashe County, somewhere probably around 1900. And... so anything that I can find, that even if it's not my own family, if it has a regional association, I like. And then I collect a lot of, just family memorabilia. This is an interesting letter from 1913. It was, my great-grandmother's brother, Dick Horton, he went to Farrell, Pennsylvania and became a jeweler and optometrist. And he met this lady there and courted her for a while. And then apparently he met somebody he liked better.
Oh, no.
So he broke up with the original lady, and this is a multi-page letter that she wrote to him expressing her dissatisfaction with
Shock and dismay.
yeah, and even threatening to take him to court for breach of promise.
Breach of promise. That son of a gun. Look how thick that man. She had a lot on her mind.
She did, and she got it all out. These are some original tintypes. This is Jack Horton. He was the second sheriff of Watauga County. He's my 3 times great-grandfather.
And I think it's hard to see, but everybody stay tuned because we're going to see a much bigger picture of that same gentleman. And he was, you said, the second sheriff of Watauga County, which was an important position.
Yeah.
Because it paid cash money.
Yeah. And I think they were the tax collectors at the time as well. So.
Yeah. And that was a elected position.
Yeah. So Michael Cook was the first sheriff of Watauga County. He was appointed, and then Jack Horton was the first elected sheriff, and then they were elected ever since then.
What is that piece of glass that looks like the state of North Carolina?
Yeah. So that's a more recent story. This during Hurricane Helene, a glass tabletop on my front porch was blown off and shattered, and as I was sweeping up the glass, I found that shard, and just like you said, it looked just like North Carolina.
Wow.
So I thought that would be a good keepsake, a good reminder of the storm. And, I reflected on it at the time, saying even though, we were broken for the moment, we would be whole again at some point. So, and you'll notice I have several instruments on display. So my grandfather Harmon, he was a carpenter, but could make just about anything. So he used to make dulcimers, and this is one of his dulcimers. And then his first cousin, Leonard Glenn, was also a well-known local craftsman from the Sugar Grove area, and this is one of the banjos that he made. And then at various places, I've got other dulcimers on display, a few that Ed Presnell made, and Ed was one of the premier craftsmen in this area, and he's also a distant cousin. So I find it fascinating how all these people from in this same family were storytellers and craftsmen and musicians, and I'd like to think I got a little bit of that, but along the railing up here, I've got some examples of old coverlets that used to be woven back in the day. These two in the center here in particular, they're dated, so you see 1832, 1839, and I know that this one is from Pennsylvania. I think they're both from Pennsylvania.
Both from Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Now, excuse my ignorance, but what is the difference between a coverlet and a quilt?
Well, a coverlet would be woven on a loom, whereas a quilt would be hand-stitched. Well, the stairwell I kind of call my Hall of Ancestors.
Hall of Ancestors.
So I started out working on genealogy, and along with that, collecting family photographs. So I've collected those through the years, and I knew I wanted to do some kind of special project with the photos. So I began collecting antique picture frames, and then I'll show you the result here.
Let's see it. I'm anxious to see it.
Now, this first one is just this is not a family photograph. It's a reproduction print, but of course you got to have Daniel Boone.
And you're related to him.
I am. He's an uncle many generations back. Well, one thing before we get into the photographs, I want to tell you about this. So, talking about dulcimers, my cousin Chris Harmon recently entrusted me with the care of this piece for my collection, but this is probably one of the first, if not the first, dulcimer built in Watauga County, probably around 1888. And it was built by my great-great-grandfather, who's pictured here, Eli Taylor Presnell. But the story goes, well, he lived out near Beech Mountain, and the story goes that a stranger from Kentucky came through in the 1880s and was looking for a place to spend the night, and he stopped at Grandpa and Grandma Presnell's, and so they invited him in, and then sometime that night he pulled a dulcimer out of his pack and played it for them, and they had never seen this before, and Grandpa Presnell asked if he could make a tracing of it. And then after that, Grandpa started making them.
Wow, and then spread all across Watauga County, probably from that single tracing.
Yeah. So he made it for his son, Uncle Nineveh Presnell, and Uncle Nineveh's initials are on the back.
Can you see him?
Uh-huh. NVP, Nineveh Vance Presnell. And then the initials below it, IMH, that's Uncle Nineveh's granddaughter, Ida Marie Harmon. And it passed down to her and then to her son, Chris. But Chris told me that his mother used to use it as a snow sled. And eventually the neck got broken off and it's been replaced, but it was replaced by Leonard Glenn, the man who made the banjo, and he was Eli Presnell's grandson. So anyway, a lot of family
as a snow sled.
Yeah.
You can't make this stuff up.
So these are just various direct ancestors, grandpas and grandmas of varying degrees. The man in the upper left corner, that's the man we were talking about earlier with the tin type.
So that's the second sheriff of Watauga County.
Yeah, Sheriff Jack Horton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He's got a sheriff's eyes. They peer right through you.
And then that's his son beside him, Jim Horton, and his wife, who was Polly Council. And she was the daughter of Benjamin Council and the niece of Jordan Council Jr., who gave half the land for the town of Boone.
I don't mean to be disrespectful, but she looks an awful lot like Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies.
She does, yeah.
And you were telling me earlier, he was in the... he was a prisoner of war in the Civil War, correct?
Yeah, he was in the Confederate Army, and I've got a piece I'll show you here in a moment related to that.
He's got some hard eyes as well. He saw some horrible things. Huh. But wow, what beautiful photographs.
But I've told my niece and nephew if they ever want to just, know about their family history, they could come here and stand in the stairwell.
And just listen, and the voices will talk to you.
Sort of see it all at one time.
Wow. And who's on this wall here?
Oh, those are just various great-great-grandparents, and the gentleman in the military uniform there on the right, in the middle, Alexander Martin. He was from the Green Valley community of Ashe County, but he was a Union soldier.
Now, we did a tour of a house, Ivy Point Farm in Ashe County, that on the stairwell right here going up the stairs, they had all their family pictures.
Okay.
And they call it the dead wall.
The dead wall.
And he was like, you don't want to be on this wall.
Yeah.
But that's the first time I did. But that made me think of this, the dead wall. But I like, what do you call it? The wall?
Hall of Ancestors.
Hall of Ancestors. Has a little bit better ring to it. Sorry about that, Jim. I still love you.
So when I started this project, I thought there should be at least some system to it to kind of understand who people were. But these are my parents and a picture of our family with my brother and sister. Then I have my 4 grandparents, and then those are my 8 great-grandparents. And then from there, they're just kind of scattered hodgepodge.
Impressive. I have to say, Terry, as we were walking up the stairs, his eyes caught me. Tell me who this fella is.
Yeah, it's probably like you see in those old shows where the eyes follow you.
No matter where you go, yeah, they are piercing.
This is my great-great-great-grandfather, Alfred Yates, and he was originally from Wilkes County and went into the Confederate Army and actually survived the Battle of Gettysburg. But then at some point after that, he was captured, taken as a prisoner of war. And at that point, he was offered either the choice of becoming a prisoner, going to a prison camp, or being sent out west to fight the Sioux Indians in Dakota Territory. So that's what he chose.
What a choice. Go to prison or go fight Indians.
Yeah.
Wow.
So those soldiers, the former Confederates that were now Union soldiers and were sent for that purpose, they were called galvanized Yankees because they just had a thin layer of Unionism Deep in their heart, they were still Confederates. But
Did he survive the Dakotas?
he did, and came back and married, and then moved to Watauga County and built a house out in the Cool Springs community out in the Shawnee Hall Township. And that house still stands. My great aunt's living there now. But he's the one who is related to Daniel Boone, and he supposedly witnessed the hanging of Tom Dooley.
Tom Dooley down in Statesville for the murder of Laura Foster.
Yeah. And then I just have, artifacts. This was my father's little jacket when he was a boy, and his baby cap. And we don't know who in the family this belonged to. It was in my great-grandmother's trunk, so presumably one of her children. And the lady you said looked like Granny Clampett. This was her drawstring purse, and it originally contained some of the things that were on the table here, including her Bruton snuff and her little pocket knife.
Wow.
And her birch toothbrush.
A birch toothbrush? What in the world is that?
Well, I guess in the absence of toothbrushes, that's just what you swirled around over your teeth to get them clean.
Interesting. Appalachian ingenuity.
And I've just got various things: my great-grandmother's hair combs, my grandfather's pipes and lighters, my great-grandpa's leftover Camel cigarettes.
Wow.
And then a couple of wallets that belonged to two of my great-grandfathers who were also brothers, which, yes, that means my family tree does not completely fork.
No comment. No judgment, I should say.
Yeah. And then this is a sunbonnet that belonged to my 3 times great-grandmother, Temperance Shoal Council.
Wow.
So
boy, that's in crazy good shape.
Yeah.
How old is that, do you think?
Well, she died, I believe, in the 1880s. So
wow.
Yeah. Then I'll show you some pieces in here too. Speaking of the Siamese twins, let me move this horse just a moment so you can see it a little better. But there was a lady in the Trap Hill community of Wilkes County, which is where the twins lived originally, even before they were married, after they came to North Carolina. But then they eventually married the Yates sisters and continued to live in that homestead. But
which that's a crazy story, that Siamese twins married 2 sisters.
Yeah.
And the twins had 2 different houses,
Yeah.
one wife. So both twins spent the night with one sister, and then the next week would spend it with
Yeah.
That sounds like Jerry Springer.
Yeah, and unbelievably, they had like 20-some kids between them. So,
and they still today are having family reunions. It's I've been lucky enough to go to one, and I think you have too.
Yeah.
So it's an awesome story.
Yeah, it's kind of like Asia meets Appalachia. It's very interesting and a really fascinating story. But anyway, this lady was selling a couple of rope beds, and I didn't have room to display the rope beds because, as you can see, I am sort of wall to wall.
When are you building the next wing?
Well, when I built this wing, my brother came and toured it, and he said, "So basically, you just built an addition to put more stuff in." And I kind of was like, "Yeah, he kind of hit the nail on the head. That's true." And one guy I was showing my house to, he said, "This is like a museum." And then he said, "And you live here?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do live here." But anyway, I took one of the headboards and just had this bench. This was some wood from my grandfather's woodworking shop, and these legs were balusters out of a railing from a local Baptist church. And so we just kind of put it all together to make this bench, which I call my Siamese twin bench. But
and you have a pillow for it. Where's the pillow?
Yeah, the pillow used to be on the bench.
Show me that.
So there's Chang and Ing.
Yeah. From Thailand.
Yeah.
Ended up touring the world. They were literally the rock stars of their era.
Yeah.
And settled down in Wilkes County, and then moved to Mount Airy. And I've actually been to their grave there. It's a crazy story.
And the new museum there is wonderful. I don't know if you've been there, but it's really nice. And don't let the pair of shoes underneath the bench fool you. That was not one pair of shoes that the twins shared. They did have 4 feet, but those were my great-grandpa Yates's shoes. That was in my grandparents' barn, and
Looks like some kind of shelf. What did it?
well, I thought it looked like a shelf, which is why I brought it home. I thought I'll make something out of it.
I love how you repurpose stuff.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I did end up using it as a shelf, but what it was originally was where they would grade tobacco, and as they would pull the leaves from the stem, they would categorize those leaves based on the quality of the leaf. Okay. So there were different compartments for the different grades of leaves.
Interesting.
Yeah. Then I've got a collection of a few spinning wheels. This one is the only one that I believe is a family piece. I think that did belong to my great-great-grandmother Horton. And I think they called these small wheels flax wheels. I am not a spinning expert, and I know there are a lot of people out there who could answer that question.
And they take this stuff really seriously, because I've been burned in the comments below for mislabeling. So please, if you are an expert on spinning wheels.
Yeah, tell us what the different uses were for a large wheel versus a small wheel. And then this is a yarn winder. I do know that.
I do know that.
And it originally had some kind of counter on it that would count the number of turns.
Really?
So that I guess that helped know in some sort of measurement what the quantity of yarn was that you...
To be consistent, I bet on every spool they knew how much. Okay.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments if we're wrong about that as well.
This is an old school desk, and it came out of the Cool Springs Elementary School, which my dad attended. And as far as I know, what I've been told is that Cool Springs School was the last one-room schoolhouse in Watauga County.
Wow.
And
are your dad's initials carved into this one?
No, somebody has something carved in here. There's the number 4. I don't know. And there's where the inkwell would have gone. And of course, some girls' pigtails were probably dipped in that at some point.
More than one.
I've even got my pencil from the 1st grade.
Terry, you have an affliction. You have your pencil from the 1st grade. Who saves that stuff?
Terry Harmon, obviously.
Oh, well, I'm thankful for it, because this is an amazing collection.
Well, thank you. And I'll tell you a humorous story. You know, some people don't believe in corporal punishment these days, but
I wish my parents had. But now I understand why.
But this little black belt is one, in addition to the fly swatter and probably other instruments of torture.
My wife talks about the fly swatter. She hates that.
But my mother had this little black belt that she would use to discipline my brother and sister and me as needed. And so years later, when I was helping her clean out some drawers and cabinets, I came across this in the very drawer where she always kept it. And I asked her if I could take that, and she let me have it. Then it was like, well, what are you going to do with it? So I decided to make a little book strap out of it, like for school books.
That's much better use than the other, right?
Yeah, so there you go.
Wow. Great story.
These are a collection of family Bibles that belong to different people. This is one that I wanted to show you in particular because we were talking about my ancestor, James Horton. So this is a New Testament from 1862 that my great-great-grandfather carried during the Civil War. And even inside it has an inscription that he wrote himself, and it says, "I carried this book through the Confederate Army and through a month of prison life on Chesapeake Bay." So he was at Point Lookout, Maryland. Yeah, so this is one of the, I guess this is the largest family Bible I have. This is the old Horton family Bible, and Grandpa and Grandma Horton says they bought it in 1883, and then of course, like any old family Bible, you've got the Got the family section that talks about how they were married in Boone, 1869. And, just all the old marriages and births and deaths. And this came from the old Horton homestead that Sheriff Jack Horton built, probably in the 1840s.
Which, going back to the picture that we saw
Yeah.
on the wall,
Yeah.
in the little tintype.
And the bed that it's sitting on, this was actually the bed frame that my dad was born in.
He was actually literally born right here on this bed. Wow.
Yeah. 1939. Different mattress.
Thank you.
Different bed.
Thank you. and then your grandparents, said used it your entire life.
Yeah, most of my life it was their bed. Only until later years did they ever replace it. Wow. And speaking of my dad, that's his little toy dog.
Love it. A little spaniel.
Yeah.
Do the legs move?
They do. And it has a little hook here. I think you put a string on it, and it was probably...
you could walk him around?
It was a walking dog, yeah.
I love it. Probably from the 1930s?
Yeah.
Or 40s?
I'd say 40s. He was born in 39, so it would be 40s. One thing I wanted to show you in this room, I had these pillows made. I had copies of these old family letters, and I thought, well, I'll just have that put on pillows. And so this particular one was written by my great-great-grandmother's brother, who was also named Jordan Council, and he was in the Confederate Army, and this is a letter that he had written to his wife. He says, I was glad to hear from you, and to hear that you was well and doing the best you can. I hope that I will see the smiles of your red ruby lips once more in this world. And once was spelled W-O-N-S-E.
Love it.
But anyway, he says, I could tell you a heap. And he says, I don't know when I'll get to come home. But yeah, anyway, I just thought that was pretty cool. And then the letter over there is a love letter that my great-great-grandfather wrote to my great-great-grandmother. So these are some of the old tools I have that mostly came from my two grandparents' homes. And again, your viewers might need to help us figure out what some of these things are. I think I know what a lot of it is. So I've got an old toolbox here that's just full of different things, lots of hand drills. My grandmother actually labeled that. That's a saw that belonged to my great-great-grandfather. This was something that I wasn't super familiar with. I wasn't really familiar with this myself, but I've since learned that it smooths out the mortar like when you're laying brick. Probably a lot of people know that. I'm just one of the few who doesn't.
I did not know.
All kinds of hammers, and of course a scythe. And these are some kind of cutters, but
I think those are for wool.
Okay.
I may be wrong.
Well, my uncle wondered if they used that to shear sheep.
I do. I think that's what it was for.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Again, correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong.
And I have no clue what this piece is. It almost looks like you could hold it that way.
I was almost wondering if it was something to do with shoes, making shoes, but I'm probably incredibly wrong.
Yeah, have no clue.
But you know what they say, Terry? Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
That's right, yeah.
And I'm sticking to it.
And of course, that's a log grab.
Yep.
And I think most people, well, not a lot of people grow tobacco these days.
No.
Some of the younger generation might not know tobacco spears. Where you would cut the leaves off the tobacco stalk and then pull them down onto this spear to spear them onto the tobacco stick.
Yep.
And that's a drawing knife and an adze. And this would be really, you would cut stuff with stalks. You might cut corn with that. You might cut tobacco with it.
Okay.
I did not know what these were until my uncle filled me in. But these are brush axes. So he was talking about how a lot of times where you would have road crews of convicts who went out and cleared brush, they might use something like that.
Okay.
And then These are vices, and they might have been used to either hold something together or spread something apart, depending on how you turned it.
Oh, that's a big one. I've not seen one like that.
And of course, that's a
yoke.
little yoke. That was made by a man named John Mast, who lived years and years ago, and a cousin gave that to me.
Wow.
And then a different style of a butter churn.
Okay.
I did not know what this was till I was looking at it a little closer and researched it.
Some type of measuring?
It's called a Doyle scale.
A Doyle scale?
Doyle.
Oh.
And it's used to measure timber.
Okay, for marking off a log, I guess.
My grandfather Harmon, he did a lot of logging back in his early days, and I believe this was his. A lot of people will know what these are, but some won't. Tobacco setters. And I can remember when my dad grew tobacco using those, and filling it with water and putting your plant in, and then putting that down on the ground and pulling the trigger to release the plant in the water. This was just a homemade duster, like if you wanted to dust your tomato plants, just get you an old coffee can and
put your 7 dust in there.
Attach a stick and poke some little holes and just go along shaking it.
And once again, Appalachian ingenuity.
Yeah. I had forgotten until I was talking to my uncle, but my grandmother, when I was growing up, I remember just using like old nylon pantyhose, filling it with dust and then just walking along and shaking it.
Wow.
And then these both are corn planters.
I've never seen one like that.
And you put your corn seed in here, and somehow it dropped into this little chamber inside.
Yep.
And
push out the ground, then open it up, kind of like the tobacco setter.
Yeah, and I don't know. Seems like that would be a lot harder than just dropping the corn by hand, but
maybe not.
What do I know? Of course, an old rake. And this would just be like a tamper, if you're trying to smooth ground.
Wow.
And an auger and a corn knife. And my uncle remembered that was my grandfather Henson's grain scoop.
Yep. Had a lot of cows and critters with that, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then I just put this chair here because I thought it was interesting. This came from the old Baird house at Valley Cruces, but I understand that the reason they're so low is that they were fireside chairs where you would just sit up close to the fire and get warm. I guess the closer down to the fire you were, the better off. This chest is full of all kinds of old planes.
Well, I guess it's time, Terry, for me to get on down the road, but before I go out the door, what in the world are those? Those look like a couple of tombstones. It says E.T. Presnell asleep in Jesus and America Presnell. Terry, why in the world do you have 2 tombstones over your door?
Well, I told you I did a lot of genealogical research. So sometimes if I'm out in the cemetery and I've left the notebook at home or my camera,
right,
I just take the stone.
Oh, don't tell me that. It makes me an accomplice.
No, the true story is, earlier we were talking about Eli Presnell making the dulcimer and America banner and banner elk and all that.
Oh, yeah, on the wall in there that we saw the 2 pictures of.
Yeah, so they're my great-great-grandparents. And my grandfather, late in his life, wanted to get a better tombstone for them as a couple.
Oh, I'm starting to feel better about this story.
So he and his cousins went together and bought the stone and installed it. And of course, they took these up off the ground, and it was like, well, what are we going to do with these? So they gave them to my grandfather, I guess, since he had sort of spearheaded the project. And he made this wooden frame for them and had them in his woodworking shop for years. And he said, when I pass away, you can have these. And so I got them. I was glad to have them, but then it's like, well, what do you do with 2 tombstones? So that seemed to be like a space that it would fit well. And so it is kind of just a good thing for a parting, for a farewell. As
hopefully people, not a final party.
Right, yeah.
I hope you enjoyed our visit with Terry today. His collection of early American and Appalachian items is absolutely unparalleled in my experience. I really appreciate his generosity and kindness in letting us come into his home. If you enjoyed the video, please let us know in the comments below. Until next time, we'll see you on up around the bend. See ya.